electric vehicles, augmented reality, all these new things that is coming up. How do we empower our faculty to, get a knowledge in this and new teaching learning styles, and then enable students to learn this in their academic curriculum? So this is the overall gist of the program, right? We need to develop the teaching excellence in faculty. To quote, Chairman Anil Sahasrabudhe, Anilji, says, see, there are 5 lakh teachers who are teaching under AICTE. There are 5 lakh teachers, right? And within the overall UGC, CBSE and the whole system in India, there are 1 crore teachers, right? But the question is, who is teaching with teaching excellence? Who are the teachers who have teaching excellence, right? That is the program AICT is trying to build. The goal is to take this program to 1 lakh teachers. And before we get to 1 lakh, which is a very large number, the program has already started with 98 teachers. So I'll give you a history of this program so that, as Anilji said, there are more and more batches that will be started. And when these new batches start, if you have a context of this, you will be in a much better position to inform your fellow faculty members, or inform, or personally even apply for the program, right? So this is a quick talk on the origins story. Right? So the story goes back to 2017. Right? It goes back 4 years when Facebook, which is now called Meta, because they have a new vision to build a new metaverse, right, created a virtual reality program. Emerging technologies are of very high importance in the digital economy, and as the world is transitioning from fossil fuels to electric vehicles, and technology is going from 4G to 5G, there's a whole digital economy being built, right? And in this new digital economy, there are new technologies, new tools that are coming, and there are a lot of job opportunities in these areas. But our faculty never had the opportunity to learn this when they were in college, right? Because these technologies are coming only right now, right? So, so one of the things that is always challenging is to enable faculty members to teach these emerging technologies to their students, right? So a lot of problems need to be solved. New curriculums need to be created. New faculty development programs need to be created. It needs to take into consideration the teaching and the administrative load that faculty has. And obviously, and since faculty are senior members, unlike students, faculty have families. So you need to allocate time for family, and then engross in like a study, right? And then once you get knowledge in, let's say, virtual reality, how do you as a faculty member continuously update this knowledge? Because the industry is changing very fast. Every year, there is a completely new version. If you've been using an Android or an iOS Apple phone, you would have seen how fast your Android operating system upgrades. So if you're going to teach students to, in any of these new technologies, you need to also constantly stay updated, right? So one of these initiatives in 2017 was taken by Facebook, and they started a program called the School of Innovation. And they started with a small pilot integrating the virtual reality course in Shastra University as a 3 credit industry elective, right? This course was taken by students across 12 branches. So unlike, let's say a course like, electric vehicles, right? It has computer science in it. It has got electric, electronics in it. It's got, mechanical moving parts. It's got electrical moving parts. So it's like multiple, interdepartmental curriculums that are coming up, right? And the students, irrespective of whichever department they belong to, are able to take these new industry electives, right? So one of these experiments was with the virtual reality program. And seeing this program succeed, Girish Madhugodam, who stands in the center in that black shirt, t-shirt, right? So he created this program for web development, advanced web development. And Girish runs a company called Freshworks that has just gone public in NASDAQ at $12 billion market cap. So that's a young company being built out of Chennai, and with around 2,000 engineers working there. They were able to create something that was like the Infosys moment of 98 or 2000, right? When Infosys listed in the American Stock Exchange for technology companies, which is NASDAQ, that is when most of the world got to know about Infosys. But for people in the industry, Infosys was already there for many years. So many of you may have heard of Freshworks, many of you may not have heard of Freshworks. But this is Google's first investment in India. So when Google Capital, the venture arm for Google invested in India into a startup. Freshworks was the first startup. The investors in Freshworks are the same companies that are investors in Flipkart, which you might all know. But Fresh does, doesn't sell in India much. They sell mostly in North America, in Europe, and other places. So Girish, is sort of like taken as a leader in the industry. And there are more than 800 SaaS companies. They belong to this vertical called software as a service. There are more than 800 companies in India which look up to Freshworks. So what Freshworks does in the Indian industry as a leader, that is what most of the Indian companies then follow. So Girish decided to create a curriculum for web development. And the reason was, when Girish wanted to hire engineers, right? You interview 1,000 graduate students to filter down to 100, and that interview is taken by the HR team, right? But then if you want to do a software engineering interview, you need to bring a software engineer to do the interview, right? And that is very expensive, because the software engineers, time is very limited. They mostly are doing production level code in the industry. But Girish was able to pull them out and then do interviews, and then you select 10 or 20 students. So from 1,000 students, you're doing all these processes just to select this 20, right? And the 20 are then taken through a 6-month training once again in the industry to become capable of doing this, right? But with the ability, like what virtual reality and Facebook did to create an industry course through a teacher in the university system, Girish took that same model and extended this to the web development curriculum, right? So within 4 semesters from 2017 to 2019, a small team was able to. So I've seen a question from Gautam, but I'll take all these questions at the end. Otherwise, I'll lose my train of thought. So thanks for asking that question, Gautam, but I'll come back to that. Right. So from 2019. By the end of 2019, or around 4 semesters of experimenting at Shastra University, where the vice chancellor was very accommodative to do a lot of new pedagogical innovations, right? So we've been using textbooks and chalks and blackboards and maybe some computers to, like, do labs and all, right? But we need to get to the next level, like, and the next level is like super important to reach as a nation, right? So so new teaching learning methods which were envisaged in national education policy, these were all being experimented in this university. And you know so I sit on the technical universities board in Kerala, right? And let me give you hard stats to make a case, right? So the pass percentage in Kerala Technical University, if anybody wants to take a guess, you can take a guess in the chat box right now. The pass percentage in KTU is 33, and Kerala Technical University has 100,000 students. uh, Niti Aayog rates Kerala as the best schooling system in the country, right? Now, the entry into engineering into Kerala Technical University is your physics, chemistry, maths. AICTE has now expanded this to 13 more subjects, but right now it is physics, chemistry, maths. So students learn, PCM, for many years in their school, and then crack this entrance exam and come to college. Can anybody take a guess on the pass percentage of physics, chemistry, maths for first year engineering students under KTU? Right, that pass percentage is 18, 18, right? So the foundations are broken at school itself, because in first year, physics, chemistry, maths, and engineering, we're not radically changing the curriculum from what you learned in 11th and 12th, right? But students are not able to do this. They're getting a pass mark and coming through, but they're not having the clear understanding of the foundational concepts, which is why our pass percentages are super low, right? And this is just graduation. It is just passing out, right? There's a big difference between graduating and having the skills that is required to work in the digital economy. So this gap is like so big, right? In these new teaching learning processes that were established at Shastra University, if the curriculum has a desired learning outcome, 87% of the students, so 52 students out of a class of 60, were able to learn SAS curriculums through a faculty that was trained, right? And the faculty didn't have previous knowledge on these curriculums, but the faculty was able to use the tools and new processes to enable 87% of the students to reach the learning outcomes. So when this experiment was going in 2019, AICT started a new program called the National Education Alliance for Technology, or the NEET program. This program is headed by a very, very uh, interesting person in AICT called Buddha Chandrasekhar. He's the chief coordinating officer for NEET program, and he's assisted by Dr. Elangovan, who's an innovation officer at AICTE. So this team selected from over 2000 educational technology companies, a group of 14 companies initially, to create what is called the National Education for Alliance program, where proven teaching learning methods were taken, and AICT was enabling institutions to implement these new proven teaching learning methods. So, we became a partner to this program. And around that time, COVID struck. The first wave of COVID happened. And one of the things that was done by the industry was to create a software for powering the war rooms in districts. So after the 1977 emergency, right, the 77-78 emergency period, it was for the first time in our country that district collectors were put in charge because the Disaster Management Act came into place, right? And each district collector controls all the hospitals in that district. But there are so many hospitals and so many patients that how do you load balance incoming patient load into hospitals? And many people who get COVID really don't require hospitalization. It is only few people, around 20%, who have difficulty in breathing, who need access to hospitalization. And from this people, very specific group of people, maybe around 5%, requires advanced medical treatment like ICUs, ventilators, oxygen beds, right? But if everybody is coming in, how do you filter this large volume of people, and how do you enable medical doctors to distribute the load across hospitals? And what you're seeing in this image is the war room that was built by industry professionals and then taken over by students. And the software that you see is what I will quickly show you, right? This is Corona Safe Network. It's an open source solution created by around 300 engineering volunteers in the country. It was led by the ex Flipkart CTO Mekin Maheshwari, and very interesting people from all over the world, including the vice president at New York Stock Exchange, was the head of engineering there. We're writing code for this. Right, so this provides you real-time analytics. For example, you get live dashboards of beds. So I can share this link in the chat. So when you guys have time, you can go and check this later. Right, but to give you a quick example, this is sort of like live stats. So this screen that you're seeing here, this is the link to that particular dashboard. So what is being shown in a disaster war room, that same data is available for everybody in the field. So this is live data. So currently in Ernakulam district in Kerala, there is 370 hospitals in this network. There are 16,000 patients who are live. There are 3,14,000 patients who've gone through the system. Out of the total 12,000 beds, 4,000 are used. Out of the total 4,000 odd oxygen beds, nearly half of them are used. Out of the 1,470 ICU beds, 45% of them are used, so on and so forth, right? And if you see these hospitals, they're entering this data live. So this is like updated live from the field, and this has been going on since May of 2020. The advantage is you have distribution graphs. For example, in this you have data of patients registering, and if you see through this, right, this was the first peak somewhere in October of 2020, and this was sort of like the small second peak, and this was like the big wave. We call it the COVID second wave nationally, but individual districts, they might have smaller waves of their own. So this was like a big peak around April, May, and today this is like the count for the month, right? So you have analytics and a lot of data that can be built because you've created a system to do that. I'll not go into the details because it's quite a extensive product in itself, right? But the idea was that this software, once it's built and is deployed, this was the first 60 days. You remember, the first 45, 60 days when it was the lockdown, everything was locked down. So there was so many industry engineers who could volunteer. But immediately after that, remote work starts, everybody goes back to their job. And who maintains the software, right? Because in the second wave, there is a need for oxygen module. That oxygen module was not there in the first wave. You didn't understand what COVID was. I mean, when I say you, it was like, you know the, like nobody understood that suddenly you needed an oxygen module, right? These are things that you quickly need to react, and we have the engineering ability to build and ship like software that doesn't crash, right? uh, so so one of the things that AICT did was that, you know AICT, and I've been working closely for many years now. I've been co-author for the National Student Startup Policy as well. I sit on a couple of committees enabling AICT to select, colleges for MBA and entrepreneurship and other programs. And we created this, national fellowship program to select 30 students from the country, from all over the country. Select 30 students, and from this, you know enable these students with high-end software skills by bringing in industry experts who have more than 15 years of experience, right? And we spend around, I don't know, maybe around 2 lakhs as scholarship for these students for a very intense 3-month training program, right? And those students, some of them would be able to work on the software development in Corona Safe, right? And in Jan of 2021, 50,000 students applied. So from 35 states and union territories, from 2,347 institutions across the country, 50,000 students applied for the program, but only 24 could get selection, right? And this was not a very complex selection process. It was to build a simple to-do app, which would take maybe a software engineering student 5 hours of work to code. There were only 3,000 students who could, submit code from this basic standard, testing, which could pass, code which could pass all the tests were like 100, and people who could write code in what is an industry standard was 24. And then AICT said, okay, can't you take 6 more? And we said no. And the reason we said no was the gap between the 24th student and the 25th student is so big that if you have to create the curriculum for the 25th student, there's so much more work involved. And you're in the middle of like a pandemic, right? So we could only select 24. And one of the key learnings from this was, see, this is not a reflection of the IQ of our students, right? In fact, one of the key learnings that we had, running a standardized test at such a large scale, I don't think any standardized test in this country or possibly in computer science programming has been happening at this scale in the world, in India for sure, right? uh, we realized that it was not a reflection on the IQ, right? It was only that what the industry expected and what the curriculum provided was different. It was totally different, right? And this was like everybody used to say there is a gap, there is a gap, there is a gap, and everybody says there's a gap, but this was like how big the gap was. And now we had numerical data on it. AICT took a look at this, and then AICT said that we want to bring these advanced skills to 100,000 teachers. You've been doing experiments in Shastra University, and now we want to scale this program to many, many more students. In fact, the number is 2.4 crore students. That's the chairman's goal. But before you hit 2.4 crore students, you've got to start with your first 1,000 students, right? And before you start with 100,000 faculty, you have to start with your first 100 faculty. So AICT decided to select 50 institutions under a program called the Leadership in Teaching Excellence. I'll send you a link to the site so that all of you can check it out when you have the time. Uh, and this has the letter by the Honorable Vice Chairman on outlining, the context behind LITE, and how students had applied and students couldn't make the cut, and AICT decided that they need to like solve for this, right? And this has all the details. What do teachers gain? Faculty who are part of LITE, they learn what is a learner-centered model of teaching learning, right? And there is one faculty who's possibly listening to this talk, Professor Mehul Patel, who's part of the LITE program. And at some point, he should be also giving and sharing his experience with all the other faculty members, right? And then delivering a competency-based curriculum. So we need to move from rote learning to actual, demonstration of the technologies or the knowledge that you've gained. and then transforming assessments instead of a final summative assessment. How do teachers do continuous assessments? How are teachers able to see the mistakes that each student is making and give specific feedback, right? In today's lecture based teaching methods, faculty have a lot of load on them to be able to even complete the syllabus, right? So there is absolutely very limited time available for faculty to clarify doubts and questions and things like that. So how do we enable faculty to do all of this, right? And then, just like I told you from school, the quality of education has to improve greatly at the school level. But if your input from the school itself is great, then your output from the university will be automatically much better. So how do faculty directly identify gifted students in CBSE schools or other state schools and give them direct admission to the universities? And all of this is part of the National Education Policy 2020. This teaches advanced knowledge like functional programming, which are usually taught in IITs, and it enables faculty who complete this training to then work with the university to introduce a minor degree. So all of you would know that AICT in 2018 introduced the AICT model curriculum for engineering, where 180 credits 4 years was reduced to 160, with 20 credits being optional for students to get minor degrees, right? But we need to first enable faculty to deliver this minor degree. And uh, and these institutions and their faculty members would be recognized by AICT as leaders of change. And AICT would take these institutions as lighthouses or showcases for the 10,000 institutions under its regulatory ambit. So this is the LITE program, because we we had data that there's a huge gap between the industry expectations and academic curriculums. AICT decided to solve for this. And by August of 2021, 475 institutions from 22 states had applied for the program, out of which 50 institutions made the cut. The list of these institutions are available in the program. So uh, this is, I can share the link to you, so it's much easier for you instead of saving time. I'm realizing I'm taking a lot of time sharing the story, so I'll try to wrap quickly and then enable questions. Right. So, and from around 675 faculty, 98 faculty members were selected. Right. Now, if you remember, the story started with Corona Safe, and the students who completed the training, the 24 students, 14 of them graduated into an internship program. And these students subsequently started working with a program called the 10-bed ICU. So this is, I'm just cutting in two stories right now. So one is what is happening at an AICT level, AICT seeing the data that students are not being able to qualify an industry program. They create the LITE program. So all of that is going on. And at the other end, the students who were trained under AICT, these students started working with very interesting people, right? So let me tell you who these people are. A key member of this is a person called Srikant Nadamuni. And Srikant is well known in the technology industry globally for being the founding CTO of Aadhaar, right? And along with Nandan Nilekani, Srikant manages the e-governments foundation. Vinod Khosla, I'm sure most of founder of Khosla Ventures, but more importantly, the co-founder for Sun Microsystems, one of the pioneers in the 1980s in the technology industry. They created Sun Microsystems. And Dr. Sudarshan is known for many people in the medical industry. Um, you know, as a Padma Shri awardee and a champion of the local empowerment through primary health centers for rural and remote India. Right. There's many other people in this group as well, and they created a program called 10-bed ICU, where if you remember the second COVID wave, right, the big thing that hit us was we didn't have oxygen. The major cities just ran out of oxygen, but many districts didn't even have ICU beds. And this was like a shocker, right? And the problem, even if you go fund ICU beds, so they're funding ICU beds in many states in the country. The goal is to go to 300 districts in India. and create ICU beds. Let me see if I can load up the screen. Um, there is there's like a bug or something here. There's many senior people involved, many teams. Let me try to see if there's a map of this. The map is not working for Telangana. Let me take another state. Um, Sorry for this. Yeah. So let's take Karnataka, for example, right? So in many districts in Karnataka, uh, they're creating ICU beds. So the taluk hospitals, which are the secondary care centers in the three-tier system that we have, in taluka hospitals, they're creating Swiss-made Hamilton ventilators, which are very, very expensive equipment. So the best of the line equipment are coming in. But what is the big problem here? The big problem is that India only has 5,000 intensivists. So creating a doctor who can work in an ICU is an extremely challenging medical problem, right? And there are only 5,000 such doctors in India. So even if we created ICU beds in 300, rural and remote parts of India, where are the doctors? There are no doctors. All the doctors are sitting in the cities, right? So does that mean that people living in rural and remote India will not get high quality treatment, right? So that is where the industry is working, and 10-bed ICU is working, and they've taken Corona Safe, the original tech platform, and they created a completely new capability inside this, which is called a tele ICU. So inside ICUs, there are these um, ventilators, and there are these 5 para monitors which constantly. So if you see this image, there's a right on top. I don't know if you can see this. There's like a thing which beeps. You get your heartbeat, you get your pressure rate. So many of these equipments, and if you can get data from this equipment which doctors monitor into rural and from the rural and remote place to a centralized console where doctors can see this as plots, right? So you have graphs and plots taken care from this, and this is part of the system. Then people can remote doctors can quickly see this, right? So this entire work is done by students. This entire tele ICU for rural and remote India is done by 14 engineering students trained by AICTE. And this work got recognized by the United Nations as what is called a digital public good. Right? So I'm not going to explain what is like a digital public good, but I will send you a link which can sort of give you like an idea what it is, right? Um, this is mostly to enable open source software, which is freely available for every country, and United Nations agrees, or for certain software which meet all their international criterias, those software are promoted to a public good. So Corona Safe became the 50th public good in the world, where it can enable governments and society to meet sustainable development goals. And the software was built by students. So on one hand, we are saying that our students, we don't have the capabilities, the system is, curriculum is outdated, all of that. But on the other hand, you hit the gold standard. You know, the same students, right? Yes, it was like a filtered selection process, but they're still students, and they delivered oxygen modules during a pandemic, right? So if we take our students and train them extremely well, and we enable the faculty, we train our faculty in that process, right? The process of teaching, learning, which is very, very deep, using technology, learner centered models, continuous assessments, innovative curriculums which have skilling in, it's a key component, right? That would then totally change the game, right? And this October we had a review at AICT in Delhi, where the performance of these 98 faculty members were reviewed, and there's a whole lot of processes going on there. And 2 weeks back, the chairman spoke with all these faculty members, and one of the key faculty members, Professor Mehul Patel, was given this award. This is yet to reach him in physical things, but I want to sort of read it out to you, right? Because it may start with Mehul, but it will eventually go to 100,000 teachers. And so let me read out the certificate, right? So this is to certify that Mehul S. Patel, who's an assistant professor now in Sangal Chand Patel College of Engineering and Visnagar, it's in Gujarat, has fulfilled all the requirements to be awarded the title of an AICT LITE, which is Leadership in Teaching Excellence, faculty coordinator. AICT's Leadership in Teaching Excellence program aims to work with aspiring academic institutes and train its select faculty members. So this is not for everybody, this is for very select faculty members in advanced curriculum designed by the industry and enable them with skills to create a culture of teaching excellence at their institutions. The LITE faculty coordinators are AICT's brand ambassadors of change to implement transformational goals of the National Education Policy 2020, such as learner centered pedagogy, competency based curriculums, continuous and personal assessments, and identifying gifted school children for direct admission to universities. From amongst the 624 faculty applicants across 136 institutions in 22 states, 98 faculty from 50 institutions were selected for the batch one. So this is where the chairman said there are more batches of LITE that would be announced. And in first batch, there were 98 faculty members who were trained under senior software engineers in the web development curriculum covering JavaScript, Ruby, HTML, and CSS. Right. So this particular program was for LITE in web development. But if you've noticed what Saurav was saying, there are new curriculums that are coming up in electric vehicles and augmented reality. So I'll touch upon that later. Uh, this recognition is being jointly awarded by AICT and People First Blog, founding member of the NEET program of Ministry of Education, to certify the successful completion of training that enables the faculty to facilitate delivery of a 20 credit minor degree program in advanced web development. With all its rights and privileges, signature of Chairman of AICT and People First are here unto affixed as a witness to this transformational program, and this faculty being a role model to the professional academic community. Right. So this certificate is what faculty members who complete the LITE program receive. And just to reiterate what the chairman said, this is a very, very strong training program. And just to borrow Anilji's words, there is no attendance certificate in this program, right? The faculty has to really skill up and qualify for this program. And this opportunity would come to all of you as well, right? So the new programs where LITE would be coming in is one is definitely web development. This is the uh, this is the link. This is not yet live, so I'll not share the link probably. But this is the for the faculty members who've completed training. This program, this link is for the students, for the students to understand what is the program, how is the path to industry created, what is the web development 101, 201, 301, and 401 curriculums, right? And what are the skills that you get, right? And it's very important to note that when we talk about even professional skills, right, from an industry perspective, it is not just technology. Technology is one part, but that is like a whole artistic element to this, right? You need to create design which is very intuitive. So when our 14 engineering students create a tele ICU software, they need to see the screen through the eyes of a doctor, not an engineer, right? And this knowledge is what these students are gaining by working with industry experts. And these students have been very lucky because they've been working with Srikant Nathamani, who created Aadhaar, right? And they need to be excellent communicators. They need to ask technical questions. Half the time your job is just talking and communicating and writing documents, and the code you write others should be able to read and understand. So if 300 industry engineers came together and worked on a single code base and in 21 days created a war room software, imagine how 300 people can collaborate together in 21 days, and all these 300 are coming from all parts of the country. They have not worked with each other before, but once they go to the process, once they see the code base, and I can share this code base with you, right, to make it very transparent what we are saying, right? And I'll share this link uh, here in the chat, right? So so many people are able to go straight into like a code base, and Keras, the fundamental software which most of them use, right? They are able to go and read and quickly understand, what is this all about, right? And this has things like code of conduct, like how would you in a community behave, like how do you ask questions, right? It has things like contributors, how do you contribute to this. So all of these things are very documented, right? And then if you have questions, you can join the Slack community. It's a free and open source. It's under the MIT licenses. So I'm not going more and more into this, right? But you can go back and see. In fact, if you're from computer science, you can go back and pull the software and run it in your own, computer, and by setting up the developer environment, right? So so how do students, learn these techniques which industry know, right? They need to learn this as part of their academic curriculum. But then we first need to enable our faculty to learn this curriculum, this way of working, this way of teaching learning. And then, students are able to, take new questions or take new issues and then continuously update the software. Right. So the software goes through continuous updation because every time it gets used in the field, the doctors have more requirements, and software can always be continuously upgraded, right? So so this is the web development curriculum where a good developer needs to be curious, needs to be like persistent, right? And this persistent is very important, right? There's error messages that will come in your screen when you write code. You need to understand and read what is this error message, and then how do I solve for this, right? So that whole skills need to be taught within the academic system. And the next evolution of this program, which is why one of the reasons why I agreed with Colonel Venkat to do this talk. I haven't been talking in a public forum, I think, since 2016 or so. Been just focused on doing some work. But this was an interesting opportunity to address a lot of faculty and share this experience with you. Okay, we have a question. When will this lecture end? Maybe in another 2 minutes. I'll stop. um, yeah. So the opportunity for your students to join the next batch of the program is going to come soon. There is a batch 2 of this program that's going to start. The applications will be announced in a week or two by AICTE, but you could just let your students know that the next batch is coming. 40 students will be selected for this, and it's a full scholarship program. The scholarships are coming from Eric Schmidt Futures, and for those of you who don't know uh, Eric Schmidt was the chairman of Google. Now it's called Alphabet. Uh, so this is a fully sponsored program. There's very key people from the industry who are backing it, and students will be able to continuously contribute and work with these industry experts, to learn these skills. So if your students get into the program, it's a very prestigious thing for the university, and this has the class of 2021. So there are only 3 women in this. If you look at this batch of 14 students, so we've reserved 10 seats for women to have a better gender balance, right? So this website will go through a couple more updates, and the applications will open soon. You will get alerts on that. I'll request AICT to also update, or Saurabh, to work with Colonel Venkat and ensure all of you know about this program when it launches, right? And the new programs that will come for faculty are electric vehicles as well. A pilot is already going on. In fact, for the first course, right, which is done by in partnership with the industry leader Mycelio. It's a large company in the EV space. It's run by Shreyas Shibalal, who's the son of the Infosys co-founder and CEO Shibalal, ex-CEO Shibalal, right? This program teaches students, foundations of electric vehicles, components, and then mathematically modeling an EV, right? So this course is currently under test. 16,000 students had applied for the first batch, and some of them are going through this program. And once it is fine-tuned, this course will also be available for first faculty members to learn. So LITE will be expanded into these new areas of electric vehicles, augmented reality. And if you are a teacher, you should wait for the right course which you like, because you're going to learn everything which is emerging and continuously being fresh and updated. So you can't learn something which you don't have an interest in, right? And the training program is it requires you to allocate time, because you're going through learn the same curriculum that you're going to teach students. But as faculty members, one of the key things to notice, it is not necessary that you learn the entire curriculum on day one. Very hard to do, right? But as a faculty member, you can do it as a continuous learning process over a period of a year. But if you reach a minimum level of requirement, that will enable you to start teaching the curriculum to students, because you will be always ahead of the students in terms of the knowledge that is there. So as long as you are comfortably ahead of students in the knowledge, the system will give you the tools and the processes, and then you will get support from industry experts to answer questions which you may not know answers to. You will get support from students who previously done this course as teaching assistants, to enable you to to deliver a learner centered model of teaching learning, right? So this is it. This is the broad story of the origins of LITE. So let me just recap this once more. It's a lot of information I think I've shared with you, right? So this is sort of like a transformational program at AICT. It's for teaching excellence. It started in 2017 with Facebook being a partner, creating a virtual reality program. Girish, enabled Freshworks to build a web development curriculum. The teaching learning process is tried and tested with high learning outcomes, and AICT has enabled this under the National Education Alliance for Technology program. It's been tested by industry when COVID happened. AICT selected some students, and these students were well trained by the industry. Because a lot of students couldn't qualify, AICT realized the need to train faculty members first, so that more students have the opportunity to learn these curriculums, right? And 50 institutions are part of LITE Batch 1. The work was separately recognized by United Nations as a digital public good, which, to my mind, is the gold standard that any software can achieve. It's an internationally global recognition, and it's out there in open source. The knowledge is free for anybody to check what it is all about, right? And AICT is keenly watching this at a leadership level, doing the midterm reviews and looking at data, and enabling this program for more curriculums and for more teachers in the years to come. So, as a closing note, just to wrap up this, interaction, and then hopefully take a lot of questions. Uh, the in Hindi we have this word called shiksha, right? But there's another word in Sanskrit. The word is called adhyayana, right? It is made up of three words: uh, adi, aya, and ana. So Sanskrit is like maths, right? 1 plus 1 plus 1. You automatically know it's three. So if you know the meaning of adi, aya, and ana, you automatically know the meaning of adhyayana, right? So the root is the key. There is a prefix, there is a root, and there is a suffix. The root word is called aya, adhyayana, adi, aya, ana. The root word aya, Uddaya, Uddaya Surya. Ud is up. So Uddaya is upward motion. Uddaya Surya is upward moving Surya. Right. So Aya is movement. Ana is this Sanskrit term to translate any verb into a tool. So for example, pat, patana. So patana is the tools to study. Right. So if you add ana as a suffix, you can translate any action, any verb, right, that you do into like a tool to do that action, right? And then adi. Adi is the Sanskrit word for beyond, like adhikam, like to go beyond what you can see, right? So in our senses, we've never seen electricity, right? We can't see electricity, but we can see light. We can hear the sound. We've never seen a brain wave, but we can see an EEG. We've never seen the heart waves, but we've seen an ECG, right? So there are more things than what we can see and sense. And Adhyayana is the tool that enables us to go beyond what we can see, right? To realize the ultimate truths, Ekam Sat Tattvamasi, or Aham Brahmasmi, right? So the James Webb telescope is going up. For those of you who don't know, James Webb is the most expensive telescope that science has figured out. It's a 10 billion telescope going, researched, created by the European Space Agency, NASA, and Canadian Space Agency. It's going up on December 18th, right? And our understanding of science is very limited. At quantum physics, we are stuck. At the theory of relativity, we are stuck, right? We have no idea what is space and time yet. There's so many more unknown questions than known answers today in science, and we need scientific breakthroughs, right? And that science breakthroughs are going to come through these James Webb telescopes, or the CERN, where they're trying to smash quarks and find out what are these fundamental particles that build reality or nature, right? But for India, our knowledge, our traditions, our culture, 6,000 years of knowledge encompassed into the Vedas in a language that is not changed, which is mathematically so precise. That's the key to the knowledge, right? And in this word Adhyayana, so much is encompassed on what is education, right? It's the real tool to go beyond, to understand, the basics, like what is life and what is death and why are we here and who are we, right? So in this journey of life, if you've seen universities, and everybody has a motto, right? And if you've take even AICT, right? Or IITs, or if you take foreign universities, there's always a motto. It comes in Latin for foreign, but for all Indian universities, uh, it is in Sanskrit. In AICT's case, it is yoga karmeshu kaushalam, right? Yoga is skill in action, right? It talks about karma yoga at a very deep level as its motto. Like, you have to do the work to get the knowledge. You just can't theoretically learn it. You have to do it. You have to do the karma to get the knowledge. And if you focus your mind and energy into that one karma, in that moment, you will lose your sense of identity, become one with the work. And as you finish your work, you will grow to be a more developed person. And that is karma yoga, right? One of the ways to understand or hit self-realization, right? Um, so so in this journey of life, in Pupil First, which is the school that we are running for teachers and students to learn these emerging technology curriculums, uh, our motto is Anugachata Pravaha. I'll not go back into the Sanskrit, just because it's just getting longer and longer as a lecture. But in Sanskrit, right, one of the tones or modality is blessing. Like, you're able to bless, benevolence as a tone. Uh, it is like Mangalam Bhavatu, right? It's just Mangalam to all of you, right? So Anugachada Pravaham is a blessing. Um, it is coming from the root word Gachata. Anugachada is actually one word. Again, 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 3. Anugachta. Gach is the root. Gach is to go. It is to go. So Gachati, Gach is to go. Ta is the suffix for blessing everybody, right? And Anu is Anugarikuga, Anugamikuga is to go along, right? So Anugachada means may you all go along. It's like a blessing. But to where? Pravaha. Whether I'm here or you're there, the sun will rise and the tides will come and time will keep going on, right? So there is a flow to this life. And Anugachada Pravaham is a blessing to all the students, including faculty, when they come to us, they're students for us, right? It's a learning for everybody to go with the flow of life, because the new digital economy is very confusing, right? There's so many things trying to take our attention and focus away. And there's so much more information than we can ever read and understand and handle. So when so much information is out there, it coming so fast at us, right? How do we even make choices in life? And you get very confused, right? So in times of those critical choices, when you meet that times, those critical junctures in your life, our blessing will come to your aid, where instead of your rational head and logic and all, we hope you will use the intuition from your heart to understand what is the choice you want to make. and then listen to your heart and go with the flow of life, and then see life as a journey of continuous adhyayana or education. So that's it. That's the piece. One of the other credentials that I have is the Prime Minister's Champions of Change for Education at Niti Aayog, amongst the other things that I do at KTU and AICTE's policy. Sit on around 4 chief ministers' advisory boards. Advise Bharat Petroleum to help their startup fund. I advise the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology for their 635 crore TIDE scheme. I think I represent India in the Indo-US Science and Technology Forum, which is by lateral forum set up between Washington and New Delhi. 9 people from Washington and 9 from Delhi representing India. So I've been lucky to be part of these global and national and state and regional level initiatives. Um, so that's it. That's the talk for the day. I don't know how many people are there. Let me just go check the you know participants list. Oh, there's 285, but I don't know if everybody's still there. So open to questions. If you can, drop comments, or if you like this, or if you have thoughts to share, happy to hear all of you. I'll stop sharing screen. Um, okay. Oh, Saurabh, do we have a time check? I wanted to actually speak much lower, but I took mostly like 50 minutes, but I'd be happy to take question and answers if you have questions. If you don't have questions, you can just say, how you felt about the talk, or generally whatever you think. Uh, okay, but anyway, there is some questions already, right? So let me take that. So when will this lecture end? This lecture has ended as of now. Um, So does NEP, this is from Sunil Sangoli. If you're asking a question, great if you can like mention the name of your institute so that I know, because the name automatically comes assuming you've given your right name when you're logged in. Does NEP encompasses these skills for future engineering graduates? Yes, NEP is all about this future, right? The last policy we had in education was 1986, 34 years ago. And in 1986, there was no internet, right? So we completely missed bringing internet into our classroom educational system as a core part. So, the key skills that you require, learner-centered model, right? Currently, we are in a teaching-centered model. You come and you lecture to everybody, but how do you enable a learner-centered model to happen? And how do you give curriculums in that model? And what is the role of a teacher if you're not lecturing anymore? Because now you have tools where you can record lectures and automatically give it to students, and they can listen whenever they want, right? But the idea is students learn the skills from these curriculums and demonstrate. And when they make mistakes as a faculty, how do you enable to correct them? Continuously giving them feedback so that they reach learning outcomes. So when EV industries go into the out there, they're able to build an EV vehicle, right? So yes, and AICT is looking at LITE as a vehicle to bring these skills to teachers, and it will soon come to all of you as well. This is from P. Srinivas. As a teacher, one need to evolve as personality by working on the inner being. Yes, how is that technology can enable such transformation to have a better teacher mindset? So, it's a very deep question, right? So, one, the inner transformation has to be inner. I don't think any tech can help there, right? But the transformation of a teacher to a teacher with teaching excellence, that can be done, right? So imagine you were teaching without a textbook. That would be like very, very hard, right? But imagine if you had a better tool than a textbook. Steve Jobs once said, when computers were introduced in the 80s, in fact in 84, right, that the computer is a bicycle for the mind. So many of you may have heard this, but if man and animal runs together, right, a man with a cycle will outrun any animal. We can directly run with a cheetah or a gazelle, right? But with a man with a cycle can really, outrun any animal. So the computer, in an analogy, was a bicycle for the mind to do many more things, right? So in the same sense, new tools which AICT will provide through leadership in teaching excellence will enable you to move from a teacher to a teacher with teaching excellence, and as a teacher involved in the teaching learning process, and continuously do innovations in better teaching learning processes so that you can add your innovations into the teaching learning process using technology. So that's the LITE program. So Colonel Venkat and AICT team can share more details on that. Okay. Very informative, great experiment, interesting. When is the next batch of LITE? From Utkarsh Sharma. So the current batch of teachers are finishing their training on November 30th, right? And once they finish their training, AICT will be submitting a final report on how many teachers were able to complete the training. What was the learnings from those trainings, right? And then we will work with AICT to issue the next call, and the next call would be possibly for a new technology. It may be for augmented reality or electric vehicles and things like that, right? But you need to be in touch with your institute and inform the head of the institute that such a program is running, and in future you would want to be a part of that, and AICT will issue a call for it. I've shared the link for LITE, so you can share those link. And the institute head should have a conversation with the university. Most of the universities are now aware of AICT's LITE, but if your university is not, because if you are an affiliated college or an autonomous college, you will need the university's permission to enable the curriculum as an elective. So that is there. Okay, so good presentation, thank you very much. Thank you for the lecture. When is the lecture about web? So this question I haven't understood. When is the lecture about the web? I have not uh, understood that question. If you can sort of ask that again, that would be nice. Ranganath, very interesting. Thank you, thank you. So which year will NEP be implemented? So two parts to this question, right? So one is there is a national plan that AICT is also part of, that is being created. But you can think of LITE as one of the early vehicles to implement NEP. So all the teachers who are qualified under LITE, they will be teaching under the NEP 2020 model, which is why the certification is also, like I read out to you, a very strong certification. When is the next batch scheduled? What grade students can join? So students can join uh, only after the faculty selection and faculty training is completed at the institute. So faculty are very important, right? Just because there is computer and there is internet and there is a lot of things, right? A computer and internet cannot read emotions of a student. And very often students have more challenges, like personal challenges. They are at a young age, between 18 to 22. They're slightly above teenagers, but not yet mature adults, right? So there's a lot of emotional support. They might have problems at home which will prevent them from studying. So lot of things that the faculty is today not able to see as a holistic development of a student, because the lecture itself takes all the time, right? And then there is administrative load, and then there are these other things that take of your time, right? So we want to create a program which the faculty can take up and do at their own pace and get qualified and then introduce courses to students. But generally all the programs that start at third semester for the students, in last review, AICT chairman said he wants to start an initiative called Head Start, where these programs are implemented from the first year itself, right? But that is still a vision that the chairman has shared with the AICT leadership. um, and hopefully it will come to fruition very soon. uh, how much of design thinking concepts are involved in this unique model, Professor P. Raj? So you know very good question, but this is like a very long answer to give. See, the whole idea of design thinking is to look at the full system as a whole, right? So let me give you like an example. I mean, maybe not right now. So when you look at, okay, maybe I'll give you an example because it's a. Let me share screen once again and do this. Just give me 1 sec. I have to take a particular screen to show you something, right? Yeah. Okay. Let me share screen once again. Screen. Okay. Right. So when you are, I hope you guys can see the screen. The faculty who's asked this question, Professor P. Raj, can confirm. That would be awesome. Um, where is this? Just sorry, there's just so much questions on chat that when I scroll, it scrolls very fast. Okay, Professor Viraj, right? So if you look at this screen, and I'm hoping you guys can see this, uh, the whole education system itself is very complex, right? There is a regulatory layer like AICTE. That itself is like very complicated. There are 10,000 institutes and 5 lakh teachers. Imagine the complexity that AICTE has to work with. 10,000 institutes, you know, 5 lakh teachers, right? So that is one layer. Then you have the technology layer, the pedagogy, right? The new teaching learning processes, which itself is like very complicated, right? Teaching learning itself is a extremely complicated subject, right? And I can go deeper into this, but since there's so many more questions, I'll just stay at a very surface level, right? Then curriculum. Electric vehicles changes every year. Okay, how will you create the curriculum and keep it updated as per the dynamic nature of the industry? Extremely complex problem on its own, right? Then comes institutions, academic councils, regulations, BTech, minor degree, curriculum integration, faculty training, all of that, right? And then the classroom, where finally a teacher is delivering this course to students. And all of this have to be seen together because there are 15 lakh schools, 40,000 colleges, now 1,043 universities, right? So this is the full stack of Indian education system, right? So this design thinking is what is we use to deliver this. Okay, so that was just to give an answer. I hope that was helpful. um, when will batch 2 faculty training on WD start? As I said, Miss Bhavna, this I will know only when AICT informs. Very enlightening. What would be the duration of training for faculty and student? Very good question. So faculty training is generally supposed to be what is called the continuous professional development, because it doesn't end, right? You learn a new process and a method and a bit of the new curriculum, because we can never teach you the entire web development curriculum. It is so vast. I mean, in the industry, we have this saying: the technology industry is going so fast, like a river, that we are all software developers standing with a bucket in the river, and taking one bucket at a time of knowledge. There's so much knowledge today, right? So, what the training we will give you, which will be the same training that the students, or what you will deliver to students, a 3 credit course. There is a 101 beginner course which will get you eased into creating websites and web development using Python and all of that, and then you go into advanced frameworks, Ruby on Rails, TypeScript, Rescript, functional programming, more and more complex concepts as you go, right? So the training is supposed to be continuous. There is no stop, but you can do it at your own pace. And the only thing that is expected is the faculty is always ahead of students, right? And once the faculty starts delivering this will become very, very easy for faculty to do this. We've taken you know 3 years to just build the process at Shastra University. So we've worked with faculty very closely to continuously enable them batch after batch deliver high results for their students and their institutions. So Polytechnic teachers, can you apply? Please send an email to director.fdc@aict.org informing your interest to be a polytechnic college. um, I, the selection criteria and all is decided mostly by AICT. So you can reach out to Colonel Venkat, who's the director of faculty development cell, who's set up this talk as well to do this. Thank you, thank you. How can we enroll for training? Yes, you can email Colonel Venkat, director, director@aict.org. So maybe I can just post this link. Okay, stop share. Let me take the email ID. Uh, director.fdc. Yeah. So I hope actually you must have this email ID, right? Because possibly you got this invitation letter. So yeah. So this invitation has come from Colonel Venkat, uh, and that's where, right? So let me go. Interesting, useful presentation. Um, Wow, there's so many questions. So I will go one by one. Uh, there's so many questions. Okay. Um, what would be the duration of training? Nice presentation. Polytechnic teachers we've covered. How can we enroll ourselves? I just said you can check with Colonel Venkat. What would be the student selection process for the selection of 20? That would be shared with the teachers. Rajkumar Samantha is from the LITE faculty program. So that would come to you, uh, Professor Rajkumar, very soon through Suma and Reena, who are helping you run the program. Are only final year students eligible? No, it's open for all semesters. Can you conclude this whole session in one sentence? Wow. So is that a message to conclude? I don't know. But since there are more questions, I will sort of like say um, Anugachata Pravaham, right? I've shared a lot of knowledge and I've taken a lot of questions. So since one of the faculty has requested to conclude the session, maybe that would something that I'll also take, because we've genuinely ran over time, I guess. Right. So sorry for keeping a lot of unanswered questions from a lot of faculty, but this has been very useful for me to have this interaction, and I thank AICT for giving me this opportunity to have this conversation with you, and this opportunity to interact and share my uh, experiences and knowledge to you. So thank you, everybody. I'll hand it over back to Saurabh at AICT to conclude the session. Saurabh, back to you. Saurabh, are you there?
Oh,
Yes,
Sanjay, sir.
Saurabh. Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you very much, sir, for such a wonderful session, sir. Sir was meeting. Sir was busy in some meeting, so he could not come attend in. But he will surely talk to you after the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so can we conclude, Saurabh?
Yes, sir. Please.
Okay, so thank you everybody for joining. It was good having this conversation with you. Take
Thank you,
care.
everyone, for such a wonderful session, sir. Thank you.